Hello, Butchery Gamaroo, and welcome to Gadigal Country on the Eora Lands here in Sydney. I'm Simon Thomsen, editor of StartupDaddy.net. Welcome from wherever you're watching here in Australia. Well, welcome to our new webinar series, How to Start Up. Each month, we'll be looking at a key issue facing startup founders with an expert who will offer their advice on how to tackle those issues. Each session runs for around 45 minutes and you'll have time to ask questions at the end, maybe even during the event. You'll find a chat box on the screen. Just ask what you want to know and we'll put those questions to our experts. Today, we're going to kick off with how to start up with Kayla Medica. She's a marketer and a startup marketer specializing in the B2B space. She's launched in new markets, new products, and built new teams and functions. She's done it all, as you do in a startup. That's all part of the fun, isn't it? She's worked for several leading startups and also produces the Medica newsletter on Medium. She recently launched the Medica Focus Network to help marketers zero in on their goals and the things they need to achieve to succeed. Today, we're going to cover some key areas of marketing. They include getting the basics right, the team, your first hire, and having a long-term vision. We're also going to look at how to ensure your marketing is not a silo and does work with the sales, customer, success, and product teams, all crucial parts of that big wheel. And finally, let's talk about avoiding cutting corners, how to develop strategic plans, and low-stakes experiments. We'll also have a quick look at the tech stack. Carla told me that's something that many founders want to know about. We won't miss out on that one. Now, as I mentioned earlier, let us know if you have any questions. We'll get to as many as possible in this session. Feel free to tell us your name and your business as well if you'd like a little bit of a plug. Well, let's get on with it. Kayla, welcome. I want to start by asking you about your journey. What led you into the marketing department and, of course, working with startups?
Well, thanks for having me. It is a twisty-turvy, lots of squiggles kind of story. So I actually originally, my university degree is in Japanese and linguistics, and I thought I was going to be a translator. And I did do that for a while. I worked for a marketing company that was almost like import-export, but they wanted to bring Japanese products to Australia, and so they had a Western Australian audience. And as I was translating materials for them, I had to call out a few times, like, as your target market, I'm not really interested in what you are pitching me, and I'd prefer if this and this changed, then I'd be interested. And so that was the beginning of my transition from Japanese translator to marketer, and then from there pivoted into startups and tech.
Arigato. Well, isn't that a great start? It's like that example of you never know where you start and where you're going to finish on that journey. So let's kick off with that idea of the basics. So you're setting up, okay, I've just launched my startup. I'm pretty focused at that time, I'm pretty sure, on developing my minimum viable product. I want to get that right, you know. Hopefully I've talked to some potential customers and I have an understanding of their needs and how to meet them. Somewhere along the way, I am going to need someone who's going to be able to market my product. When do I start thinking about that and having that discussion? Is it at the point when I'm ready to roll?
It really depends on what your own personal skill set is. So if you are the founder who is less on the technical side and maybe more on you're doing the market research, you're interviewing customers, you're doing all that stuff, then picking it up yourself is a good place to start because you have more knowledge about the value proposition and what problem you're solving than anyone else. And ideally, as a founder, you're also getting, your first 1, 2, 3 sales. So if you have that skill set, you can try and set up the basics yourself. If that is not your area of expertise, then I do recommend getting someone in, even a contractor part-time. They don't have to be a full-time hire, but having someone who is dedicated to asking what is the problem that our customers care about and how do we get that message in front of them is really key.
Okay, so let's say I sort of put in my job description, I stick up a LinkedIn sort of positions vacant, looking for a Japanese translator, who knows a little bit about marketing. Do I get someone fresh out of uni or do I sort of aim for C-suite from the start? How do I juggle this? Because money's tight as a founder, I haven't been able to raise lately. What do I do?
That's a very wide spectrum of uni student to C-suite. Somewhere in the middle would be best. If you have a good understanding of marketing, then you can go for someone who's a bit more junior because you're able to give them direction, advice, a task list. if you're not from a marketing background, you really should be aiming for someone who's a bit more mid to senior because you need them to be autonomous. If you're a founder, your time is so precious. Do you really want to be spending it doing someone else's job because they're not able to do it themselves because they just don't have the experience? And it's really unfair to hire a junior and have high expectations of them because no one's teaching them and they've never done it before.
Okay, the other thing is I'm passionate about my product. This is going to change the world. I want everyone to be an evangelist, everyone to believe. Does my marketer have to know the insides and outs, or are there just some fundamentals of what they do in their skill set that really means it could be the world's most game-changing piece of technology ever, or it could be a bowl of new flavoured porridge?
Yeah, so one thing I really advocate for is for the marketing person or team to be way more involved than what they traditionally have been. Mm-hmm. So if your marketers are in a silo and they're just pumping out Instagram stories or something like that because they need to fill their time, it's not going to be the most effective. And in a startup where your money is tight, your time is tight, you've got a runway that you've got to get, milestones across. Having your marketing team really understand what the product actually does from a functional point of view, not just from the value proposition, but also from the value proposition. So breaking it down into function and value, and then understanding, going to the teams who are working with the customers and saying what's the thing that disappoints our customers when they actually get into it? Let's not market that. Let's leave that out. Or, what's something that once they get it, they really love? Let's highlight that. And if you're not talking to your customer success or customer facing team members, the marketers don't know, what to push up and what to push down. And having that consistent thread of what does the product actually do? Are we representing it correctly and accurately? Or are we, maybe pushing the boundaries of truth a little bit? Leads to a happier customer, leads to more sales with customers who actually want the product that you're selling, and they renew, and renewing is everything in B2B SaaS as well.
It also keeps a whole bunch of regulators off your back, as we've seen in recent times. You don't want to go down that path. What about reporting? So where does this person sit? Are they part of the sales team? Do they come directly to me as founder or as CEO or CTO, or who do they report to? That's kind of and how do I measure what they're doing?
Yeah, so I really believe it's not that new in startups, but it's fairly new in the overall, business history of the chief revenue officer role. So having that one person that sales, customer success, and marketing all report to, because otherwise those teams just don't have the incentive to work together. Mm-hmm. And it's really important that they're all saying the same thing. They're all hitting the same targets. They're all aligned. And so having those groups report to one person, whether that is the founder or whether that is a head of sales and marketing reports to sales, or it's a head of marketing and sales reports to marketing, it really doesn't matter as long as they're reporting to the same person and they're aligned. And then measuring their success is not just, is marketing hitting their goals, but is sales hitting their goals? Because sales comes after marketing. So if marketing's hitting their goals but sales isn't, maybe marketing's got the wrong goal at the moment and we need to better align those two.
That is a really interesting point, because I can say, hey, look, I've done 100 LinkedIn posts,
Exactly.
I've done my job, they're not selling. But I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that, the marketing department is kind of like the customer-facing version of the sales team, really, in terms of, yes, there are others who sell the product and get it in the hands, especially in a B2B SaaS startup. But otherwise, it's oh, that looks like a great idea. Maybe I should give it a try.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things to watch out when you're hiring for agencies and stuff as well, who do guarantees. I can guarantee you 100 leads. I was yeah, I can guarantee you 100 leads. I can go get them off the street. Are they the right leads? Probably not. And your sales team is going to be the one who tells you that.
Yeah, it's the difference between a $10 sale and a $1,000 sale along the way. I want to talk about the short term and the long term, because I think that's an important part too. In that early stage, and let's assume that we've got to that point where there is a product to sell, but no one's heard of my startup. It's a whole bunch of vowels stuck together with a lack of
it is.
And no one can pronounce it properly. It's not Canva. It's not one of the world's most valuable brands just yet. But where am I going to go? What are my short-term goals? And how should I be thinking longer term in terms of not just brand awareness, but also product awareness?
Short term, as a startup, the thing that you need to work on the most is trust. Because if I'm going to take a risk on you and purchase your product and I'm going to be the first 50 customers, are you going to shut down in a year and leave me high and dry? Is this worth the risk for my business? If I really actually need you to solve a problem for me, are you still going to be solving that problem in 12 months? So building up trust, which is done through things like customer case studies and testimonials and logos on your website and all that kind of stuff, being featured in press, does help a lot with the sales. And what is going to make sure that you are around in 12 months is that you do have sales happening. And so, yeah, short-term trust, long-term, you really want to build out a reputation. So whether you're doing lots of lead generation and it's getting you these spikes in sales, are you also building the demand generation side of things, which is where people are coming to you because they've heard about you through word of mouth? Like this reputation of, one, this is really well-known name and we trust that's solved, but also they've got a good reputation for actually solving the problem that they say that they do.
So when it comes to reputation, I am the unknown quantity. No one wants to be the first one to dive in the pool. We're not sure just how cold it is.
Yeah.
Should I be looking for customers that are a recognised brand so that I can say, hey, I've got so-and-so, you know, they believe in me. That's kind of, even without getting them to say, yeah, we use the product, I didn't really like it, you know, they gave it to us for free and we'll give it a crack, whatever. Is just having that brand name there on your customer list the important part?
It's really tempting to think that that's the right thing to do, but actually, let's take Canva as an example. If you sell to Canva, how many other Canvas are there? Because a lot of people are going to see Canva and be like, yeah, I don't have Canva's problems because I'm not Canva. I'm not at that scale. I need something that's a bit more relatable to me. So when you're looking for these logos, what you want to find is people who represent the people that you're trying to sell to. So you want to get like for like. People who can be like, that's my industry, that's my niche, that's my this, that's my that. And now the trust that they can solve the problem that I think is unique to me, but actually is not unique, is there because you're solving the same problem that I have for someone who's very similar to me. So going for those big names is a bit of a vanity metric. You're not going to find, like you're going to spend, 12, 18 months selling to Canva, if not, 24. And then what have you got to show for it? A bunch of people who are like, that's really nice for you. It's not really relevant to me.
And then I suppose just what you're saying is that also kind of creates a FOMO in the experience, because if my competitor's using it, maybe they're one jump ahead of me by using this particular product, then I better get cracking too.
Yeah, and it comes back to the ideal customer profile, the ICP, where you need to really know who you're selling to.
What did you say then, an ICP?
An ideal customer profile.
Okay, IDP, ideal customer profile.
Yeah, so if you focus all your effort on selling to someone who represents 1% of the market you're trying to sell to, you're missing out on 99%. And Canva and those big logos are the 1%. So you're better off going for something that's a bit meatier. Even if Canva's, a $5 million contract, you put all your eggs in one basket, it might not go so well.
Now, I'm going to ask you this because, of course, I see them all the time as the editor of startupdaily.net. It's a PR who pitches me a case study, so-and-so loves this particular product. Generally, they don't tell me who the client is, but you guess the client because, of course, you've got X company sort of saying, I love this product. How important is that customer testimonial side of being able to sell your product to others?
Yeah. It is really important, but again, you've got to place it in the right areas. So having, let's say we've got a pitch deck that your sales team is presenting in a call to a customer and they work in education, and you've got a testimonial from someone that's not in education, not in government, not in anything even remotely close. They're going to be like, again, that's nice for you. What does it mean for me? Having this testimonial is not giving you good credit with me because that testimonial doesn't represent me. So you've got to make sure that you've got a variety of testimonials and you're placing them in a variety of areas, and where possible, you're swapping them out for personalization.
You're watching How to Start Up, a new series on startupdaily.net, today with the marketing guru, Kayla Medica. Kayla, let's go to something we've touched on already, but drill a little bit deeper. The point around marketing is not a silo. The need to work with other teams. Take us through your thinking and how to address this particular issue, because I suppose the other side of the equation is often as a founder, you are focused over here. It's like, okay, I've got you to do this job. Off you go, do it. Come back to me. Don't tell me about any problems. I just want you to fix them. What kind of problems as a marketer do you need to be thinking about fixing?
You need to be thinking about the people who come after you. So that's sales and customer success, and to a degree the product team, if they're also related to engagement with the product or anything like that. And really what I believe marketers should be doing is seeing those teams as their customer. Yep. So what can I do as a marketer for my customer to help them reach their goal? For sales, that's a sales target, that's revenue. Very easy to work with. For customer success, that might be like, how can we reduce customer complaints? And the answer is maybe we set them up with better expectations in the marketing because maybe there's a mismatch at the moment. And for product, it's things like, how do we drive engagement? How do we drive usage? That's a very software focused view, but whatever your product is, how do we get people to enjoy the product more? And a lot of it does come to, measure twice, cut once. If you're building a building physically and your piece doesn't fit, it's because someone before you cut it wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So the people doing the cutting is the marketers. And if they're not measuring, it might be because they're measuring for a different project, which is not aligned, which is where that having the one person that all these teams report to, and saying, rather than a marketing leader and a sales leader butting heads and being like, well, my team wants this, and oh, well, too bad your team wants that, my team wants this. All right, now we've got to work together. We've got to report to the same person, and they're going to tell us to, go sit in a room and work it out. And that's really how you get that consistent customer journey. Like, really think about what your customer's experiencing. They're getting this nice marketing message, then they get a demo and it doesn't quite match up, but they've invested so much time, let's at least give it a go. And then we get into the product, and the product doesn't even do what the sales team said it does because they've got no idea what it does. So, from your customer's perspective, are they having a good time? Or are they having a bad time? And how can a marketer fix that through marketing?
We've got some great questions coming in already, so I'm going to start putting them to you in a sec, but I do want to ask you about this because you were talking about that user experience, and I go back to your initial experience around you being the ideal market for this product that didn't resonate with you. I would imagine it's a slightly brave and bold marketer who goes into the product development team and sort of says, hey, your user experience sucks. But I would imagine that's also an important part of the feedback that they need to hear and probably should hear internally rather than dealing with it through the complaints channel that you've also referred to.
Well, there's a great example in there, which is to be a little bit more diplomatic and say, hey, we've noticed that on social media, this complaint comes up a lot.
So you're the diplomat here.
Yes, these are your customers. You can't piss off your own customers, So taking data, because marketing's, collecting so much data, right, in terms, even if it is a tweet that got 1,000 likes and someone says this part of this product sucks and you've got all these people agreeing with it, take that to the team. But again, if you're not working with that team, you probably won't take it to them because you're like, we don't really talk. So that's why having all these teams talk and have a closed loop of communication and feedback coming in from very different areas. Customer success will get feedback from customers directly. Marketing will get feedback through external channels. Sales will get feedback through the calls that they have. All of these things need to make it through all these teams so that everyone knows what's working and what's not.
And do you do this as like an Asana Jobs, or you're at Lassie and Jira, or a Slack channel? What's the best way to sort of tackle this so that you are all on the same page?
Yeah, honestly,
any thoughts?
It's talking.
Yeah.
So I've worked with a lot of teams.
Well, I sit around a lot of meetings where people talk, and if I find that if everything's not written down, there's not a lot of action. Everyone forgets anyway. One
format that I really liked that is really simple is to get your sales team together. There does need to be meetings where sales are leading and marketing's listening, and then there needs to be meetings where marketing's leading and sales is listening. But you've really got to go into it with an agenda, and also you need to train people on how to give feedback. So how to relay what it is that they're hearing in a constructive manner. And one format that I really like is you start with I like. Mm-hmm. I like these things that happened this week. I had a good call, we got good feedback. blah, 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 blah. These are all happy things. You start with the happiness, right? And then you go into, I'd like to see more of this. I'd like to see less of that. This is where you bring the changes in, but it's not so negative. And then you go into, I want. This is a high priority item. I want this, I need this. So you've got the nice, happy, positive, the maybe not so good, and then the here's how we fix it.
Okay, let's dive into a couple of the questions because there are some good ones here. I want to say hello to Taylor from Surrey Silk who's tuning in. Great little company we've covered here on Startup Daily. To Dee from the social media discovery app Suggestify. She says it's available for download, iOS and Google Play. Good marketing there.
Good marketing.
Well done, Dee. And Sally from Fetchy, a price tracking and price comparison app that helps people save money. See, they kind of got the idea here, but I'm going to go to Francois, who is the co-founder of Humanable CX. It's an enterprise customer experience automation platform, and Francois says that focused on business development, enterprise sales. I've not really delved into online marketing. How do you see this working for a large enterprise SaaS with high-ticket enterprise agreements with tier 1 banks? Whoa, straight to the top.
Yeah, so first of all, online, when you have a question, where do you go? It's Google.
Yeah.
So your customers, whenever they have a question about you, are going to go to Google. So you need to make sure that what is coming up when someone Googles your name is 1, building trust, and 2, building that long-term reputation. So whether that is having a really basic website, 1 page, just describes what you do accurately so that it's coming from the horse's mouth and they're not going to like G2 review sites that are saying this product does this thing, but that review's 3 years old and out of date, and that's what your customer has to go off of for research. Making sure that you have a nice presentation, as in like how you present yourself, not a slide deck. Online is really important, and that's a good place to start. And then once you have that, you can actually start to analyze how are people engaging with this. So set up your Google Analytics, set up your tracking, all that kind of stuff, very important. And then actually see, how many people are coming to this 1-page website a day, a week, a month, a quarter, and what kind of things are leading them there? What kind of keywords are they searching to get there? And then from that, you can build out, okay, people are searching for this and we're not providing information on that particular topic. Let's be the ones to provide that information, whether that is more detail on what your product does, or whether it is an industry topic that people just want to learn about and it connects really closely to your product. So that's one way to do online. The other way is, ads, advertising, social media, lots of channels. You can do partnerships, you can do content in industry newsletters, all these other kind of things. So you've got to ask, why am I doing this? What do I want out of this? And then that should direct you towards where you should spend your time and effort. Doing it for the sake of doing it is not worth it because, again, you've got limited time, you've got limited money, you've got limited resources in headcount to put towards this. So really ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? What do I want to get out of it? And how is the best way to go about doing that?
I mean, I can't help thinking that, whilst Francois is working with tier 1 banks, there are some pretty well-known brand names, some of the biggest and most famous in the country. They spend a lot of money still on marketing and putting themselves out there, so everyone knows who they are. While we're on, I just want to go down this rabbit hole for a second because you talked about SEO and Google Analytics. We're a couple of days away from GA4 kicking in, the new version of Google Analytics. Is there anything we need to know, any sort of possibilities, pitfalls, perils that we should be worried about in the next few days? And if you haven't acted from all those notifications saying, hey, this is coming, better do something about it, what should you be doing?
Well, if you haven't activated it, immediately after this webinar, go activate it because it is going to take a few days to actually kick into effect. So what you don't want to happen is logging in on July 1st and then it's blank and it takes a week, a month.
That would be a bit sad.
That would be a bit sad. So at the very minimum, activate it.
Yep.
If you are savvy and you want to do a bit more than that, there are some changes in the way that data is collected. So for example, the way that you set up your audiences previously is a bit different. So you can't just migrate everything over in a one-to-one manner. So there is a bit of fiddly.
It's not like an Apple redesign of the interface, just the same stuff but looking different. It's actually the analytics.
There's actually some differences. So go have a look at what you had set up. Make a good note of everything that's in there because I don't know if they're going to cut off access or something to your settings. And then look at, okay, how are we going to replicate this in GA4?
Thank you for that. Are you excited by it? Do you think it's going to be a win?
I've had a play in it. There's like some things that I think are really cool and then some things that I don't see why they did that.
Yeah. I'm still at that space, you know when you go into your supermarket and you go to the same aisle you've always gone to for the same product, and suddenly it's been moved and it's like, so I'm still a bit discombobulated, but I'm hoping once it really kicks in that I'll get a lot deeper analysis around our audience and what we're doing from GA4. All right, hello to Jason from Wild Squirrel Technology. He asks, is there a framework Kayla will suggest for putting together the IDP?
So go talk to your customers. That is the number one thing. And like, it's so strange that people will be like, I have this question, but I don't know how to get the answer. And the answer is go ask people. Just message them on LinkedIn. Hey, can I interview you? I'm really looking to learn more about this topic and whether or not this would be interesting for you and whether it's relevant. Ask really obvious questions. Don't be subtle. And what you want to look for is consistencies. So what patterns are emerging among people who say, yeah, I would buy this? Is it a company size? Is it an industry? Is it even things like what C-suite role is the one that connects with you? Maybe there's something going on there. I once worked with a company where we did an analysis, and what they found was that the trigger for people coming to them and saying, hey, we're now interested in solving this problem, was actually a new C-suite member coming in.
Ooh.
So the change in leadership was the trigger for a lot of these companies to be like, okay, now we're thinking about this. So that was, and then, you can use that to your advantage.
Understanding the motivations. Yeah.
Understand the motivations. And what's really important about the ICP is that it is ideal.
Oh, ICP.
ICP, sorry.
ICP, yes. Sorry. IDP, ICP.
It's ideal, which means it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
You will never get someone who matches 100% of all. So be really go into detail in it. But set yourself a threshold for if they meet 60% of this, we'll go after them. If they meet 40%, not quite there.
Yep, gotcha. On that front though, in terms of talking to them, we all get bombarded now with, Australia Post sticks a letter in my letterbox and the next thing you know, I get an email saying, can you rate us? It's like, man, you've been doing this for 100 years or so now, just try and do a little bit more of it, and I appreciate it. But what I want to ask is, how do you engage? A personal email? Do I do a post on LinkedIn or Facebook? Do I set up a Survey Monkey? What's a good way to do this? Or do I use all of those channels? Or just, throw some drinks at my office and say, hey, come and see our business, come and talk to our team and, tell us your problems?
The answer is be really shameless and almost shamelessly ask for these interviews and these questions, thinking, I'm doing this for someone else, I'm not doing it for myself. Because when you're doing it for yourself, your like embarrassment creeps in. You get a bit like, oh, I'm bothering people. So just like pretend you're doing it for someone else. And yeah, it is a mix of everything. So set yourself a goal of, I'm going to interview 50 people. And that interview could be a survey, or it could be a one-on-one talk, or it could be meeting up with someone for a coffee. But yeah, you got to utilize your network, and you got to be really shameless. And just know that when you put a message out there, very small percentage of people actually see it. And so if you put it out there 100 times, people don't really notice that you've done it 100 times. So just really go all out for it. Use your own network. Ask people that you know personally to begin with, and then ask them, do you know anyone in your network that you'd be willing to introduce me to do this? Start creeping on people on LinkedIn, sending them messages. Be really honest in why you're approaching them, because no one likes a bait and switch of, hey, I just really want to talk. Do you want to buy this thing? So don't annoy people.
Let's have a coffee catch up. Yeah.
And then it's a 60-page presentation. Just set yourself the goal of how many people you want to interview, and then just keep going until you get to that. And remember that it's not 100 people goal that all say yes. It's 100 people. So if 60 of them say, actually, I'm not really that interested, like they're telling you something. Yeah,
there is a message in there. You're watching How to Start Up with StartupDaily.net. My expert guest today is Kayla Medica. We're talking marketing. Great to have you tune in. I'm going to quickly address this one from Brett from Venue Sumo. We help family entertainment centre owners automate annoying tasks and run their entire operations. Sounds cool, Brett. On a cloud-based platform. What is Simon looking for in an email pitch from startups? What is the best way to pick his interest? Well, first of all, send me an email, simon@pinstripemedia.com.au. Tell us your story, Brett. Any other startup founder is welcome to do that. Of course, I am one person, but I will do my best, and I always love hearing from startups and what they're doing. Lana from Market Mindfully says, how do you recommend that startups plan for the first few months of marketing? Where do you suggest they start? Campaigns, channel, tactics. That sounds like the $64,000 question.
That is.
You can charge more though if you want.
Oh yeah, email me too. It's so dependent, and everyone hates that answer, but it's so true. It depends on what you're selling, who your audience is. The best place to start, I'm gonna go with if you're really early stage, first 50 customers and under.
Yep.
Personal, just you've got to be making personal connections with people.
You've got to know who your customers are going to be, and
you've got to approach them. And one really good way that I found to approach customers when you're in this really early stage is to market it as a beta product or the beta group, so they don't come in with these super high expectations, or a trial or a POC or whatever it is that they want to do, so that you lower the expectations a little bit, so that they're easier to work with and they have lower expectations from you.
But can I just say that also adds a certain exclusivity. What, you'd like me to be part of this initial beta testing of your product? Wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so it helps, and it's a good icebreaker as well. I want to invite you to this beta. It's not I want to sell to you. It's a bit different. And then really what you want to be doing is getting those case studies. So getting the marketing material, confirming that the marketing message you're leading with is accurate and represents what customers actually want to hear is really important. And the best way to get that is to get it from the customer directly and use their own language. So you want to repeat almost word for word, especially if there's industry jargon, what it is that they're saying, and you want to get really detailed use cases for how they're using it, because you can bring that up in your sales conversations and in your marketing to be like, oh, you have this problem, here's exactly how we solved it for another customer. And getting to that point is really hard. Documentation is everything, and then it's really just being loud. So there is a metric called share of voice, which is basically out of everyone talking about this topic, what percentage of that voice is you, and the loudest voice wins.
Yep.
So that's why people with big budgets, even if they have a crappier product than you, do well, because they've got a better share of voice. So you just want to start being loud, start telling the world that you're here, that this is what you do, and if this is interesting to you, we're the ones to solve it.
I do want to ask you about this. Is all publicity good publicity? And I'm thinking that whole Bud Light experience at the moment, because of course everyone in America got plenty of share of voice for Bud Light at the time, but sales have declined. Funnily enough, the same company that owns Bud Light has now picked up the sales in another one of its brands. So it's kind of for them a win-win, and I'm not sure all the customers are aware, but I'm kind of interested in that thing of, good or bad. Do I need to go into an absolute spin and start tearing walls down if people start talking a bad way about my product?
I am generally a all press is good press and all attention is good attention person. There's a few, Theranos style examples where maybe that's not good press.
But we're never going to fix that product in the first place.
So it really depends. There's a show on Netflix called Working Mums, and in the latest season they have a PR disaster, which is they launch a male contraceptive, and then the scientist who made the pill, it comes out that she'd accidentally sterilized a bunch of guys. And so then
is that a bad thing?
The PR lady's like, I've got to fix this. So, there is always a spin on negative press. Sometimes it's more creative than others. Sometimes you go down before you come back up. But I mean, if you're an early stage startup, you really shouldn't be having these. If you're having these problems, maybe you should. You should let it go.
Exactly. And it's not too late to pivot on that one and do something else. But while we're on beta, I do want to ask you about the Medica Focus Network, because you've been doing a beta on this and it's just about to launch. Tell us what it is and what's going to be happening, and if people are interested, how to get involved.
Yeah, so I've been in startups for almost 10 years now, and I've almost always been either the only marketer or in a very small group of marketers, and getting feedback on my work, where, as someone who really cares about the craft, I want to improve, but often in startup scenarios, you've just got to get stuff out and you don't really have the time to really appraise your own work or get someone else to appraise your work for you. Or, you're the one who does all the typo checking, so who's going to check your typos, right? So I set up the Focus Network as a place to submit your work and get other marketers who are also passionate about the craft to give you detailed feedback on, sometimes the feedback is, I don't really understand what you're saying. This could be clearer. And sometimes it's, hey, this imagery could be better, or, it's all constructive, and it's all people who are putting forward their work wanting, hungry for feedback. So sometimes you don't get
the hive mind.
It's the hive mind. Sometimes you don't get that from your place of employment, and you don't know anyone else who does the same thing as you, and so it's hard to get feedback on your work. So really, that's what I set it up for.
It's that sense of you're not alone in doing this. Sally from Fetchy's back with a great question, actually. What is the most effective marketing strategy or campaign you have ever seen from any startup, and why do you think it was so successful?
Oh my God, that's another $1 million question.
Absolutely. I mean, interestingly, I think Danny Millam from Milk Run was sort of seen as doing brilliant guerrilla marketing with those posters all around the street, and everyone was talking about it. Everyone loved the brand. There were some bigger fundamentals that sort of, meant the business took a different turn of events, but certainly on a low budget, he found a very clever way to get the name out there, get it front of mind to a lot of people, and in an old school way. I mean, as someone who grew up in the 80s when people were putting posters on every street pole, that's a piece of technology that hasn't changed. There's still some sticky tape and a guy with a saddlebag sort of throwing them up when no one's looking.
Yeah, I think everyone loves these big stories because they're fun and creative, but creativity doesn't always lead to results. And as someone who prides themselves on creativity and fun, it's very disappointing when you put a lot of work into something and you're like, I think it's great, and then it bombs.
Yeah, my greatest stories have only ever been read by 3 people.
Yeah, exactly. The stuff you put your heart and soul into, people are like, yeah. So there are some really great startup marketing stories. A lot of them are guerrilla marketing. Like I can't remember what conference it was. It was like years ago in the States where they put their logo in a giant block of ice, and the whole message was something around like, we'll never freeze you out. It might have been PayPal. It might have been at a PayPal event where PayPal had been freezing accounts, and so a rival came in, put their logo in the block of ice and said, we'll never freeze you out. And that obviously went people loved it.
Virgin's been a master of these, or the tease of when a rival sort of something goes wrong, there's that ambush marketing moment where you can sort of poke fun. But those ones are kind of like, I think one of the interesting ones was Firefest, and that was a massive, just say cluster, whatever, in the end. But by the same token, amazing marketing up front in terms of the promise looked extraordinary.
Yeah, and the answer to this question, going back to it, is sometimes the least exciting things are actually the things that work best. So I've spoken to a couple of marketers recently where one was saying we switched from using text-based testimonials to videos, and it doubled their conversions. Just because people preferred seeing a video, and the feedback they got was that if it's written, I feel like it's curated, whereas if it's out of someone's mouth, I feel like it's more genuine. Shout out to Darren from Aircore for that one. And then I also had a marketer who introduced interactive demos, and within putting one on their homepage, again, their conversions skyrocketed. So you don't have to be big and flashy to do good marketing. Honestly, the basics are reliable.
And there are great startups, and I'm thinking of Justin from Vloggy and the likes, who are sort of now doing solutions like that, the video testimonial, or those things that can help you get there if that's the path you want to go down. There is a whole bunch of different options. Look, mate, we've got probably just under 10 minutes left, so I want to get to tech stack because I think it's important, but the point you make is don't cut corners. So low stakes experiments and strategic plans. Okay, so, be organised for us. Tell us about being organised.
Yeah, so often in a startup, things change every day. And that's just the life of startup. And if you're in one, you've accepted this. But you can't be changing your marketing every day, and you can't be changing your messaging by huge amounts all the time. So what you want to do is, in the early days, do a lot of experiments. Find one thing that works consistently. And even if it's, low, but it's consistent, you just need to get that one consistent thing, and you need to set and forget and have that run all the time so that you can at least forecast whatever that consistency is and know that that's going to come in as a volume of leads, a pipeline dollar amount, conversion to sales, and that's safe and that's long term. Then what you want to do is basically think, how can we beat this? What can we do to beat this consistency and make it higher? And that's in low stakes experiments. So short-term experiments where you can test whatever the flavor of the week in your startup is, and you're not betting all your hopes and dreams on it, but you're letting it have a chance to succeed. And if it does succeed, great, promote it up to that consistent, always on approach. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter because you didn't spend that much money or time on it, and you've gracefully let it go. So there's some founders, we'll call them out, who will be like, I know everything. And as a marketer, sometimes, they're your boss, you got to be like, maybe we don't know everything. Let's test it. And some like that approach because they're very experimental and they come from that background, and some are not so comfortable with being wrong. And so you've got a good way to get around the founder who might not come from a marketing background, trying to control the marketing because the control is an issue for them.
When we were talking about this and I sent an email out to our readers about it, I described marketing as being like an IKEA product. Everyone thinks they can put it together.
Without instructions.
Right, until the point where you realise a couple of bits are on back to front, and then you pull out the instructions, have a read. I'm going to ask this question from Dee. Having a consumer product in a noisy market, is it worthwhile paying a PR company to assist you in creating some noise around your startup?
Yes, honestly, PR is so underrated. Again, that trust. If someone Googles you and a news article comes up about you, there's some good trust. They also will be really good at telling you when something is not a story and when you're going, maybe down the wrong garden path. So having...
Yes, what you think is interesting is not necessarily what I think is interesting.
Yeah, so they're really
it's
good
like
for
the
that.
photos of your kids, really.
Yeah, and then honestly, I've worked with some terrible PRs and I've worked with some amazing PRs, and you gotta find the good ones. But when you do get a good one, the results really do speak for themselves. I've got a founder who just started with a PR freelancer, and he's just got people calling him all the time now because they've heard about it. And it's, the loudest voice wins, and PR is one way to be loud.
Yeah, really good advice. So let's talk about tech stack, because that was the thing that, everyone sort of grapples with. Yep. Give us your thoughts.
It's very easy to be caught up by certain companies that offer startup rates that lock you in and then kind of screw you over when you outgrow that startup plan. And especially in a CRM or customer relationship management platform like Salesforce or HubSpot are the big ones, moving away from one of them is one of the most painful things that you will ever experience, and it is just horrible.
It's the crack dealer model. So, come and have a couple of tastes, and after that, you're stuck.
Yeah, so fully understand that when you're a startup, you don't have a lot of money, and these platforms are very expensive, but you really need to be a bit more long-term vision with these for thinking okay, we do this today, but what are we going to do tomorrow? Are we going to introduce something new that will make this obsolete? And will we be able to start on a smaller level and then add more features as we go and go up in the price tier, whatever it is that they offer, or are we going to have to move to something later? And the other example is if you go the really cheap way and piece lots of free tools together, are they going to all break at some point? Because they're not really designed to be done like that. So I actually really recommend do your marketing really manually. Spreadsheets, documents, notebooks, whatever it is, do it really manually, and then really look at what do I need? Not just what's flashy and what looks cool, but what am I actually doing day to day that I need to be tracked in a platform? And then that will help you realize hey, this looks really nice, but I don't actually need it. Because it's very easy to get caught up in the flashiness.
So just finally, when do I look at and think about this? Is it when I've got my first 50? Have I got 100 customers? Is my revenue at 1 mil? Or
it's when you can no longer do it manually.
Okay, so it's when there's too much in my head and the hard drive is full, and okay. Any final thoughts, Kayla? From if we go away with just well, actually, the first thing I want to talk about is if anyone wants to get in touch with you, wants to talk to you, wants to read, how and where do they do that?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, subscribe to my newsletter, which is mehdeka.substack.com. That's also all over my LinkedIn, so if you want to find it there. And yeah, my email is also just my name, first and last @gmail.com. So very easy to find.
You can also find her columns on startupdaily.net too. So tune in, click on the link there.
Yeah, my name's everywhere. I'm the only person in the world with my name, which is very good for SEO. But yeah, my one big lesson, if you are watching this and you are a marketer, as soon as this ends, go booking calls with your sales team, your customer success team, your product team, and anyone else that has something to do with customer facing, and just start talking to them. Go in with no expectations, build a relationship first, really ask them, like, what do you do? What's hard about your job? What's easy about your job? What should I know about your job? And just get to know them and get to know what they're doing. And then if you are a founder and you're watching this, please have more respect for marketers. They do a very hard job, and sometimes you make it harder.
Something to think about there. Kayla Medica, great to have you on the show. You are first of mind for me every time. Love your advice. Of course, we'll see you again on the Startup Daily Show, Friday afternoons, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. very soon. And of course, you can read her advice on startupdaily.net. Well, you've been watching the first of our new webinar series, How to Start Up. I hope you've enjoyed it. Of course, do give us your feedback. We'd really love to know what you think, what you'd like us to talk about to help you be better startup people. I'm Simon Thomsen. Great to have your company this afternoon. Look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thanks for joining us.